एप्पल ने बिल्कुल नया कंप्यूटर बना लिया और मैं बिल्कुल हैरान बैठा हुआ हूं. Ladies and gentlemen, I am surprised. I'm going bilingual. I'm going crazy. I'm losing my mind. Apple has actually broken everything, okay? Now, the title of this is probably going to be Apple Has Screwed Me Over, which is absolutely true. And I'm actually happy that Apple screwed me over because I have never been more excited about Apple. Not unironically, I know that I am one of the people that craps on them the most. When it comes to the desktops and the laptops for Apple, historically, I found for the last several years, they've always released hardware combinations that are grossly underpowered to whatever you can get on a build-your-own PC for a gross markup. And a lot of people go with it. They stay in the ecosystem, and I never find it worth it. Now, I love macOS. I really do. I think macOS is great. I made a video a while back, okay? A 4-hour Metal Gear Solid 4 video. Now, by itself, that's nothing special. But when you're editing something that ends up being 4 hours with over 100 hours worth of video content to work with, video editors start to tell you to go fuck yourself. And macOS was a resilient operating system, and I love it. It's absolutely brilliant. Now, in order to get the best Mac experience, if you go back in time a little bit, I built my own little MacBook, okay, my Mac system. I'm a Hackintosher, okay? Basically, if you don't know, I virtualized Macintosh for a while, still do, and with it, I was able to create a 16-core, 16-threaded Mac system with a high-end GPU, 64 gigabytes of RAM, all for a lower cost than I could do it just by buying straight from Apple. Now, of course, understandably, if Apple found out what I was doing, they could ban me from their system, and I couldn't complain. I was breaking their terms of services. I get it. I understand. But I'm going to show you real quick. The Hackintosh community is probably, if not, one of the most beloved communities out there for Apple, okay? These are people who literally sit down, they will create these systems, they will create computers, PCs, deliberately install Macintosh onto them in very jerry-rigged manners using third-party bootloaders, whatever you want to call it, just so they can get Macintosh running under their system without actually getting a Mac. This is kind of like a gateway drug, if you will, to actually owning a MacBook, but a lot of people build strong systems anyways. This dude built a macOS Big Sur system, the latest operating system they have, latest release candidate with Intel UHD graphics, okay, i7-9700K, and around, 16 gigabytes of RAM. This guy has built his own system. They built their own Macs, okay, and some of these people build some pretty epic fucking powerhouses. You go down, it's a long community about this, okay? These guys are really awesome. I'm glad to be a part of this community. But yesterday, Apple marked the fucking death of the community. They sent in John Wick to pretty much end all the hopes and dreams of the Hackintoshian community. Be like, how is that, Muda? Now, Apple normally doesn't even care about this to begin with, okay? Apple does not give a crap. They've had ample time to get rid of the Hackintoshian community. They don't care. As long as you're not building Macs and selling them to people, Apple does not care. Typically, they will not go after you. They don't give any fuck. I made a video where I taught you all how to virtualize macOS pretty good under most computers. Apple does not care. They don't give a crap. Now, what Apple has done is they decided to strike out on their own and make their own processor, okay? Their own actual M1 processor that's now slowly going to start to transition that goes into the actual the future of MacBooks. Now, Apple's M1 processor, which is basically a system on a chip or an SoC. If you don't know what an SoC is effectively, just this all-in-one type of solution when it comes to engineering these systems. Typically, the Macs and the PCs, as Apple states, have traditionally used multiple chips for the CPU, the input-output, security, and multiple more things. With M1, all of this is on a single SoC. With a graph over here where they've said up to 2 times faster CPU performance. This is the latest PC laptop chip. Probably not the best one out there, but they've shown that their chip not only uses less fucking power, which is better, it also gives way more performance, which is great. It's almost like Apple has fucking solved sort of like some weird conundrum. Like they've actually created magic out of nowhere. And not only have they given you more power, but the system actually lasts longer. It's an 8-core CPU, and it's capable of handling pretty heavy fucking tasks, okay? They've also mentioned it's got a 2.6 teraflops worth of graphic power on an integrated graphic card. That's pretty good, okay? You could get some gaming done on this thing if you really wanted. They've also gotten on machine learning, which is not a shocker at all, really. I mean, they already had it on their phones and their tablets. It was bound to come over. They've also brought more innovative technologies like the security enclave, meaning that this is probably the one thing that's going to stop you from actually Hackintoshing later on, for sure. We'll get to all of that. Now, they've also said they're going to start a fucking 2-year transition, okay? Now, why is this a big deal? So, to understand something about Hackintoshes, what effectively happens over here is Apple has used basically off-the-shelf computer parts, right? So, meaning that when you go to a store and you buy an Intel processor, Apple also uses an Intel processor too. Apple uses AMD graphic cards. You can buy these parts off the shelf and Hackintosh your computer. And because these are the same parts roughly that Apple uses on their own systems with some minor odd changes that aren't too significant, you can effectively build yourself your own Mac. Now, understandably, now that Apple is building their own hardware completely, with no fucking connection to anybody out in the business, all on their own, Hackintoshing is fucking dead, because now they own not only their own hardware, but they also own the security to make sure that their own hardware is the only thing capable of booting the Macintosh operating system. One of the things that the Apple community is sharing right from their keynote or whatever is hardware verified secure boot, automatic high-performance encryption, macOS runtime protections. In a very, very tiny way of putting it, that means we're fucked, okay? That means we cannot build Hackintoshes anymore. It's all over. The dream is fucking dead. Now, the ARM CPU shit that Apple brings to the table is fucking legendary, okay? This is why iPhones are almost a bit of a cut above. iPhone processors typically in some ways are sometimes a cut above the Android processors. Sometimes not all the way through. Sometimes the gap closes a little bit. But Apple has some really solid engineering behind designing a chip that can give you a lot of power for a lot less power consumption. And not only that, but Apple also provides you AI assistance, machine learning assistance on the chips as well. Apple is really good on that department. Because they're so fucking good, they were actually able to port this stuff over relatively well, it seems, into a PC laptop processor. Now, this new chip, the M1, is really part of their new laptop lineups, like the MacBook, MacBook Air, I think the MacBook Pro, and a Mac Mini desktop system. I don't know how many people own that shit, but they've decided to pimp that stuff out. And that said, this is a 2-year transition, like I told you. Now, the downside of this is, as far as I'm seeing, Apple is limiting people to like 16 gigabytes of memory, which isn't so fucking bad. It is kind of, if you're working on, video tools and high performance stuff and video editing and photo editing where you need a whole lot of RAM. But hey, we'll get to all that. Cross those bridges as you fucking get to it. Now, Apple's given like a bunch of extra sort of like showcases to tell you how fast their M1 MacBook Air is and comparing it to the previous generation. I don't know if they mean like the i3 Macs or the i7s. I mean, this could be a whole lot of whatever. I think it's something to do with the i7 desktops if we're going to be totally non-memey about it. Export a project for the web with iMovie up to 3. Yeah, no one's fucking using iMovie. Get out of here. Integrate 3D effects with Final Cut Pro up to 5 times faster. Obviously, it's their software. They're probably going to optimize the shit out of it. Watch movies and TV shows with up to 18 hours of battery life. Absolutely true. It's an ARM processor, the same stuff that's in your phone. You never wonder how like some phones can last so long? They have good battery life sometimes. It's because they're using ARM CPUs. These are designed for low power consumption and now high performance delivery at this point. Apple has fucking cracked the Pandora's box. This is why this is exciting, to me at least. And not only that, but they even went above and beyond to tell you that you can build code 2.8 times faster. You can actually you can actually develop games 3.5 times fucking faster. And if you go down, they mentioned gaming a little bit too, where if you want to play games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider with 4 times higher frame rates. I don't really know how much that means anything because the game could be running at 10 frames a second and 4 times 10 frames could be 40. So still not playable, but I get you, Apple. I got it. Okay, all jokes aside, what makes this fucking awesome is the fact that if this is as true as Apple is saying, all right, and when it comes out and it blows everyone away with how long these laptops last and how much power they give out and how cool they operate, this is going to change the fucking game. It's going to change the game years forward. Apple's not the biggest player in the desktop laptop space, but a processor like this is going to shake up the industry a fair bit. Right now, why this is important and why I'm moving past being screwed over on my Hackintosh is right now, we all operate with x86 64 architecture. Switching to ARM architecture, cell phones, where it basically is commonplace, is a pretty big fucking risk. It's a pretty big transition. Now, what Apple is doing is they're using something called Rosetta 2. And no, it's not that same shit that weebs use to learn Japanese. No, this is a tool that Apple has created that basically translates x86 code in real time to ARM. So let's say that you're buying this new system. Because it's an ARM-based Macintosh, you're not going to be able to run current MacBook programs on it unless they were developed for that processor architecture type. So what Apple is doing is they're providing sort of a transition layer. What fucks this up a little bit is this will not really support things like Premiere Pro, which is primarily the only thing I use on Mac anyways. So I'm kind of out of the fucking game. A lot of editors are kind of out of the game until Adobe, switches up and ports their entire, editing suite to ARM, which might be a bit of a tall ask starting off. But that said, this is an interesting transition. And because Apple is now designing everything on their own, it has now screwed over Hackintoshes. So today marks pretty much the beginning of a long, slow 2-year swift death to the Billy macOS system that I have built, okay? And of course, I'm going to switch to Windows. I'm not going to, cry about this or anything. It's really not that big of a deal. If anything, I'm actually excited for Apple. And I know that's a big thing for me to say. Like, I know I've been critical of Apple, but finally, it's almost as if overnight, their desktop and laptop game has just fucking changed. I'm actually really proud of how Apple's going forward. And I'm going to be real with you, for the first time, I might buy a MacBook Pro with the M1 processor. Again, given how it comes out, I'm going to see the reviews, I'm going to see how it ships out. And if it really is as good as Apple is saying, which Apple hasn't really let anybody down with how their processors have released for the most part, this is going to be a real game changer, and I'm fucking excited to see how Apple takes this forward. Now, again, take all of this with a big giant preface. We've only seen Apple's benchmarking, Apple's, announcement for it. This could very well blow up in their face when this thing ships out for release. I will say, this is an end of a fucking era, okay? Hackintoshes are finally on their way out. And it almost feels like Apple didn't even specifically target this in the first place. It was just really an unnecessary byproduct of the whole situation going forward. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited for MacBooks. Today marks the end of 1/3 of what I used Billy for. But hey, new beginnings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm actually fucking excited for Apple going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Sorry if I got way too fucking nerdy out of it. This stuff really genuinely interests me, and I wanted to talk about it. So that being said, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. I am